Hey everybody, Jeff here, joined by Justin Armenta, both with the Embroidery Nerd. Justin's with JA Digitizing Studios. I've got to remember to say that every time. Sometimes I forget. But today we will be discussing. Oh wait, let me look. I have to look at my notes. We'll be discussing how to talk to end customers about increased price with Puff. Basically, I mean, unless if you want to say that more eloquently, Justin.
I guess just maybe more of not only pricing, but discussing with the customer when they come in and what the expectations they have of 3D Puff, what can and can't be done, just so you know the direction to go with sending your design to your digitizer if you're going to digitize it yourself. So just so the customer knows, a lot of times these retail customers see these hats that are done that are pretty extravagant, or they see just something simple done well, and they think, well, that could apply to my design. So you just gotta have to sometimes talk to them.
Yep. And it always helps when they send reference pictures, because a lot of times a lot of this really complicated stuff is done on flat panel programs. So it's done pre-construction, and the rules change when the hat is not sewn together.
Correct.
So
yeah, a lot of variables when you're trying to embroider on a ready-made hat than panel work.
Yep. So generally when I talk to people about Puff, when they come into me and they talk to me, most of the time they don't ask about it. I always try to put it as an upsell. If I see they've got really, really wide text, really, really wide columns, just a design that kind of lends itself well to text, or not to text, but to Puff, I always say to them, we might be able to utilize this technique, which will kind of raise it up. It'll give it a different look. I'm not quite sure how you upsell it when you get them.
Typically, I mean, if I see a design that looks like it would look good in 3D, I'll definitely say, there's another option, especially if you have those customers that come in that are pretty much know exactly what they want. And I typically don't try to upsell on something else if they know they have their mind set up, made up. But yeah, just like there's a design here that I'm discussed today that the customer, we took them from designing their design from their t-shirts, their screen printed t-shirts. Then he came in to do some hats, and he was completely open to ideas. And I said, if we do this, and this, simplify your design, since it's going on a hat, and we have restrictions on the size that we have you do your design. But let's simplify it enough that we could do some 3D Puff, and it's something really popular, and he was ecstatic about that. So
all right, well, I'm going to pull in two comments because we have two comments. If you are watching, let us know where you're watching from. We have Letty. Hello, Letty. And Trish, good day. I have a feeling that she might be in Australia. I'm just guessing though. So one of the things that I tend to talk to my customers about when they come in and Puff gets put on the table for 3D Puff is that it's going to cost more. And at times, I've had people come back to me and they're like, well, it's a simplified version. Why does it cost more? And so then you get into the nuts and bolts of, it takes a little bit longer to digitize. It takes a little bit longer to sew out typically. And then there's all of the cleanup afterwards. And I think a lot of people, they don't consider the cleanup when they're quoting Puff jobs.
Absolutely.
I could be wrong. I don't know. Justin might differ on that one. I'm not quite sure.
No, and I think that's why it's good to have this discussion. Especially someone that is new to the embroidery industry or just new to 3D foam. When new things come like that, I guess it's not new, but when things come up like this that are an extra step or that have a hard cost to them, like the foam itself, they need to know the whole process in order to price it right. Otherwise, you're going to start losing money on your jobs. Running the design that we have flat on, a low stitch count, you're going to have your pricing point that you can make money off of. But now foam possibly could have just doubled your production time on it.
And your stitch count and your supply.
Exactly. I mean, you're You have your foam that you're using that costs, the time that it takes for the machine to stop, place the foam, especially on multiple heads. You have 8 heads that you now have to tape down or rubber band down the foam, then run the rest of the design. Now it's cleanup. So yeah, it takes more effort to do 3D designs, and you should price accordingly. Otherwise, you're gonna start losing money.
Yep. So I'm going to grab a few more comments because we've got some more watchers here. And I just lost my mouse. Here it is. We have Candace, howdy from Wyoming. Trish, sure am. I'm going with Australia. And Regina, hello from Virginia. It's nice to see you. And Letty, and possible cleanup, of course. And Eric, moreover, it's all about value-based pricing. If you want eye-catching look that brings attention to your logo, treatments like foam have high value. Price can be more than just labor and materials, though you always need to know your labor and materials to price correctly.
Right.
And then we have Brianna saying, good evening, guys. Good evening, Brianna. And Jocelyn, hello from South Georgia. Hello. So that brings up something that I find really interesting. And when I bought my first software, it came with free lessons. And the company that I was going to at the time, one of the things that they always talked about, and it's interesting because I don't see that discussion as much in the groups, is they talked about actual value versus perceived value.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say, okay, well, if you're going to add rhinestones to a design, or you're going to add sequins, or you're going to add, in our case, what we're talking about is 3D puff, you've just increased the perceived value. When people look at it, they think that it costs more just because of the special treatment that you got on it.
Right.
And so you're in kind of that spatial area between, you know how much you need to make to break even, you know how much you need to make a profit, but then there's also that window between there and the end. If it's your brand, you know, now you're looking at it as, I'm not doing a wholesale, but I'm going to try and get retail, and then you have to look at what your retail cost is going to be pitched at.
Right.
And it kind of goes the same thing when you're talking to your customer about 3D puff, is you can tell your customer, look, if we add 3D puff onto this, you can charge more because we added 3D puff on this. It's going to cost you more, but you're potentially going to be able to get much more of a perceived value out of the item because it's there.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And I just said a lot of words. Oh.
So yeah, I mean, as far as your cost, like I said, the two main things you got to take into account are you have your foam cost and the time that it takes you to clean up, and the more you get experience with running foam, you're going to see that it takes some time. You know, the heating, the poking, the cleaning up so that foam looks, you know, to where you want to have it leave your business. It takes some time. So as far as foam, I mean, it's not like it's gold. It's expensive. But I tend to tell people as far as, you know, some people want to break it down to like, well, if the logo is only an inch by an inch, or the design is only inch by an inch, and the next design I'm doing is 5 inches wide, you know, they're trying to calculate the square inch of foam that they're using. I think, to me, just calculate the whole sewing area that you comfortably do in the front of the hat, you know, 5 by 2 or whatever it may be, and just kind of know that's about as much foam that you're going to be using. Find out the cost on that part of it, whatever foam brand that you use, and that'll probably pretty much cover the whole board as far as what your cost is on foam. And if you use more than that, if you can get more out of that because it is a smaller design, bonus for you. But as far as the cost on the foam, I think that's a good general rule to follow. And then again, you with your business plan or your business setup, you know how much time costs you in labor, and you just got to find out how long it takes you to do the cleanup afterwards.
Yep. And so how I do it, so you guys have an actual example, is I look at the full front of a design. So each side panel is roughly 3.5 inches. Sometimes it's a little bit larger. So I go about 7 inches wide by 2.5 inches tall, because no matter what size my foam design is, unless if it's a small left panel placement, I'm going to have to cut a chunk of foam roughly that large to hold it down properly on the top of the hat.
Right.
And so whether or not it's a small design or a large design, I'm going to roughly be using the same amount of foam to hold it down. Now, if it's a small side placement, like I just said, then I can flip the foam over and use the other side. But if it's across the front of the hat, chances are I'm going to be using 4 to 5 inches of foam just to hold that down. And so to consider that I'm going to have some waste in there, I go up a little bit larger. The kicker with foam, though, is it's like, what, $2 a sheet?
Exactly.
It's
minimal.
Yeah. And so really what it comes down to is it comes down to your time to do it. And I'm a big advocate for pricing for time. And I know a few others that are as well, but I'll give you guys the main reason why I look at time. There is only so much time in a day. Your machine can only put out so much product per hour. And that is why I price based off of time, is because those are fixed items that then I can compare with my fixed costs and get an idea of what I need to have in order to have my machine run 24/7 or 8 hours a day. And I'll know that if I'm not charging over that amount, that I'm just not going to make any money out of it.
Right.
So I'm going to grab a few more comments, and maybe I'll double up here. Jocelyn from South Georgia. I think I said that already, but hello again. We have Raphael. I'm going to go with that. Hi from Florida. Hello. We have Michelle from Wisconsin. Nice to see you.
That's Michael.
Michael, throw stuff at me, Justin. This is why I'm not allowed to talk sometimes, guys. Michael says, 3D puff never looks good when I do it, and I do not know why. That can go into a couple of different factors. And so there's two main ones. There's the digitizing, and then there's the cleanup. And what you don't see too much out there is people cleaning up their phone. Most of the time, they just take their 3D puff and they take a picture of it when it's done, but they don't show the cleanup process that can go into it. And depending on the design and how well it was digitized and how well it's sewed out on your machine, the cleanup process might be very, very minimal, or it might be very, very large. But I can guarantee you, if I get a design that the cleanup is extremely minimal, as in rip the foam off and look, it's good, those are the ones I take short videos of and post them on social media, because that's what you see on social media. You don't usually see the ones that don't run well. You just see the ones that run really well, and that's how people are advertising their work.
Right, exactly. So yeah, the main things are the digitizing, the cleanup, like you said, and the foam itself. You got to get a real quality dense foam. You don't want to use the foams that you can get like craft stores, because typically those are a lot softer and they're just not going to give you the results. They're not going to give you the lift that you want, and they're not going to tear very clean. So those are the things that you really want to look out for. I'm going to do a shameless plug. If you didn't see our first webinar, the basics on 3D foam on hats, it's some good information. And I'm not sure exactly what's going on with your designs there, Michael, but it's a good webinar to check out.
That, and it'll give you kind of the starting points to look at your process and look at what's presented and kind of make adjustments, or give you the ideas of where you need to narrow it in. The problem with the format that we're in, I guess, right now, is that it's really, really hard to have a back and forth where you can show us images and we can dissect it, because we just don't have that ability, and it can take a little while to do that too. So we'll go ahead and catch some more comments. We have Jocelyn. My biggest problem is pricing my work. I'm glad y'all are talking about this. Most people don't realize what all goes into embroidery and don't want to pay what it is worth. I will 1,000% agree with that. And I'll caveat that with, I've had better luck with hats and shirts than I do patches. When it comes to patches, people instantly look at mass-produced ones in other countries that cost $1 or $2 to have made, and then they say, well, I want one. Why isn't it $2? So,
yeah.
Justin's like, yeah, they come into my shop too.
yeah. It's like, oh, you want it for $2? Okay, order 1,000.
Yeah. There you go. And Mike said, if I charge what foam and applique are actually worth, I'd never sell any. Have to balance perceived value with reasonable margin, then make back what I can with efficiency. Yep. And it all comes down to your area, how many you're doing. And I have all of my hard costs calculated, and I know exactly what that breaks down to in an hour. And so I know if I quote my job at the low end, I'm going to be making marginal profit. If I quote it at the higher end, I'm going to be making a larger profit. The old adage that you hear, and it's still echoed from every corner of the internet, is $1 per 1,000 stitches. And that's not necessarily true. Now, if I ran my machine at 1,500 stitches a minute, I might be pretty close to $1 per 1,000 stitches when it comes to actual price. But if I'm running a single needle home machine at 300 stitches and I'm buying supplies at the corner store instead of buying them wholesale, then $1 per 1,000 stitches is not going to make any money.
Right. Yeah. Just to throw out just generic pricing like that it's not a good idea, because there's so many factors involved in location, and like you said, the equipment you have, the number of heads you have. One thing that Mike just said that kind of rang true, as far as even if you're getting into something like 3D for the first time, or you're new to it, and you are slow at it, but you are finding that your local area, the price that you're calculating is far too high, because it does take you a while to do the process. Sometimes the learning curve, you have to either make a smaller margin or break even, just to kind of get your toes wet and get into the groove of, okay, this is how I do it. Maybe I won't make as much money in the first 2 months, but let me master this. Let me get to a point where I'm really efficient with it, and then that price that you're charging now, you're getting it done in half the time. So 3D definitely is not an exact science. It's sample and adjust, and sample and adjust, and there's designs where sometimes I'm pulling my hair out once it gets to the machine and it's on an actual hat. It's like, wow, it worked from sample to what I thought would work, usually works in my digitizing, to back to the drawing board. So there's a learning curve.
And you've got how many years experience, Justin? Like
27 years. 27 years.
27 years. So, it definitely isn't an exact science. And the things that you can use to help calculate your pricing are, you can look at your stitch count, and you can look at your machine runtime, and you can kind of figure out, you don't have to run a sample to go, okay, well, that's going to take 20 minutes to run on my machine. You can look at the stitch count and you can say, well, if I run my machine at 800 stitches a minute, then now you kind of are getting a ballpark of how many minutes divided into that. You can always go a little bit low to give yourself a little padding, but you can start to calculate your runtime based off of just looking at your run sheet. You don't have to stick a sample on the machine and hit the start button to know exactly how long it takes to run.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You have your speed that you normally run your hats at, that I'm sure, majority of the time you're comfortable at. 3D foam, I tend to run them a little bit slower. So if you have your set speed that you're running designs, you can calculate how long it's going to take stitch count wise, barring thread breaks and whatnot. But you can pretty much generally find out how long the run's going to take. And then you got to learn, if you have a single head, of course, putting foam on one hat is going to be a lot quicker than putting foam on 8 hats if you have an 8 head. So you got to start calculating, all right, I'm getting good at this. I can place a piece of foam on the hat and it only takes me 30 seconds to do all 8 heads. Or I'm new at this, it takes me a good 3-4 minutes to get foam on all the heads. So those are the factors, try it out, and that way you can gauge the time that it takes you to do it.
Yep. So I'm going to grab a few more here. We have Fred, hi from Cleveland, hello. And if I start pulling up comments more than one time, it's because I'm old, people. I'm not as old as Justin. Well, maybe I am, but I'm old. We have Ginger, I've started raising my prices to keep my workload where I want it. Mike, I hate hearing $1 per 1,000. So many people think that's still a good baseline. Eric, let alone single head versus larger run multi-head, apples to oranges. It is. Mm-hmm. And always slap down that $1 per 1,000 early when I teach pricing. one of the interesting things that I see about that, and I do see this in the home groups more often, is when they talk about $1 per thousand, people say, how can they make money at $1 per thousand? And that's usually when other people start coming in and say, well, I charge a $10 hooping fee. Or I charge a $15 setup fee, a $10 hooping fee. I charge, I charge for my stabilizer separately. Those are the things they're looking at it and they're going, you know what, this pricing structure isn't working for me. How can I adapt it? And rather than looking and adjusting the $1 per thousand, they just start adding on random fees that don't I've had somebody come to me and say, this shop or this person tried to charge me a hooping fee. Don't you have to hoop it to do embroidery? I was like, yeah. Wouldn't that be built into the cost of embroidery? Well, it should be. I mean,
and I think if they're actually invoicing their customers with a breakdown of 5 different fees for one hat, as a customer that doesn't know anything about embroidery myself, I'd start questioning that. They just want to see this is how much it's going to be per piece. Now, if you're calculating that in your head and behind the scenes, all right, I charge this much per thousand. I want my time to pay this much because it takes this long to hoop a hat. Yeah, you factor in all those behind the scenes. But in my opinion, giving a customer something like, well, it costs this, and this just to do one piece, I would be like, wow. I'd start questioning that.
Well, and then if the price, let's say if you're breaking it out into prices like that, the price of stabilizer goes up 15 cents. So the next time they come in, you add 15 more cents to their bill. They're going to look at it and go, well, stabilizer wasn't this much last time.
Right.
Or the same thing with foam. If foam goes up 25 cents, or really what, in my opinion, seems to be happening most that most people don't account for is shipping prices go up. It's not that the product costs more. It's more to get the product coming to you. And that cost has to go in. So if you start adding, I laughed so hard. There was somebody local to me that was charging her customers a shipping fee. They were picking it up in person. She was charging them shipping. And when the person told me about it, they said, well, she said because she has to have the stuff shipped to her. So that's the cost to have the stuff shipped to her. And it's like, well, I know that if I was picking something up in person and they're like a shipping fee, I'd be like, no.
That's where it goes to itemizing things like that. They start questioning. You just got to factor it all into your cost. When people are saying 1 per thousand, I don't know if they're necessarily conveying that to the end customer, but you got to remember, us in the industry get what that means. Someone you say to someone that just brings in shirts or ordered hats or whatnot, well, this has got 10,000 stitches. Okay. That would be my reaction if I didn't know embroidery. It's like, I don't know what that means, just how much. So yeah, those are the type of things that I think when you're pricing, you want to make it nice and clean and easy for the customer to understand. And I think when you behind the scenes factor in all that you need to factor in, you come up with your price and it's really clear cut to them saying, all right, I can do this hat, flat embroidery is going to be this much. If we do something really cool, I can show them a sample. I could do something, simplify your design a little bit, do 3D puff, gives it a really unique look. It's going to be this much. They see the value of how it looks different and they can choose if they want to spend that little extra money.
One thing I have never had anybody question is when I say it takes a half hour to run on my machine. they don't. Usually they'll be like, well, that's not that much work. And I say, well, it takes a half hour to run. And they're like, oh, right. It takes a half hour. Because then they start to, the value to them is now something comparable to them.
Right.
If you say it's 1,000 stitches, they might go, well, embroidery machines are fast. Or it's 10,000 stitches. Well, embroidery machines are fast. Or 20,000 stitches. But if you say it takes 45 minutes to run on my machine, they're like, ooh, 45 minutes. Well, at X dollars per hour, that's quite a bit of money. They're going to be thinking, well, you have to pay your worker $10 to $15 to $20 an hour. And that's what starts going in their head, and they can make that connection. And so generally when I discuss pricing with my customers and they come back to me, that's the first thing I come back with is it takes this long to run on my machine.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because I actually had a customer ask me, today when he was picking up. We were doing these. He's making these really big flags, and we were just doing the stars portion of the flag, embroidering each individual star, and then there was a marine logo in the center. But we had to hoop it 3 times in order to get all the pieces together. And he had called yesterday and just trying to get a time frame where it would be done. And I said, "Oh, we're working on it right now, but it'll probably be late tomorrow morning." And so he comes in today. And he's like, "So it was on the machines yesterday, and it was only finished today?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And I explained him the process. He's like, "Yeah, the stars on the left side of the stars took this long. The right side of the stars, in between, we have to line it up and hoop it." And he's like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." So he was getting, this is why I'm paying this much for 2 pieces. That's a complete custom piece. So,
yep. So I'm going to try to figure out where I left off in the comments. We'll go with this one because I think this is where it was. If someone tells you they never edit 3D, they are lying. Same here. Yeah. I don't think, maybe I've had a few designs that have not needed edits on Puff. Usually it needs a little bit. And I mean, it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Fred with an Advancy 1500 single head. I don't make money at $1 per 1,000. It does not cover my setup and cleanup. I don't think I've met somebody that has made a profit at $1 per 1,000. And if I have, it's somebody that is working out of their home and they don't have a good idea what their costs are, and they're probably losing money anyways.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. How long has that $1 per 1,000 been floating around? And look how much everything else in the world has increased in price. So how can a $1 per 1,000 work?
Yep. I'm not going to argue with that one. Mike, great topic, guys. Got to put the kids to bed. Catch you on the replay. We do have a few people that I wish they could stay up late enough or early enough or however that works. Justin, you need to go work somewhere they have daylight savings time. Eric, customers love laundry list of charges. Really rolls eyes. Letty, or alternate suppliers costs due to outages or delays. Yeah, I've been seeing that. I think you have too.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah. So, Aaron, hey guys, hello. Michael, I'm going to keep it right this time. I'm in an area that a lot of embroidery companies that they are starting to undercut the competitor to get the order, which sucks. And that's what, really knowing your costs. If you really, really know your costs really well, you know how low you can go before it's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. And chances are, if your costs are that low, their costs are that low, and nobody can go below that line for too long before they just can't pay their bills.
Well, yeah, I mean that's one thing. You're playing the long game. That if you hold firm, and of course, if you're gouging over everybody else in your area, you're never going to get an order. But if you hold firm at where you think is a good pricing point, and it's a fair pricing point to make a little money, those people that are undercutting that much, more than likely they're undercutting their costs, and they're not going to be around for very long.
Yeah, and this does kind of go into what we were talking about. You have to remember that when you make a product, if your quality's better, you can charge a little bit more for it. If you're doing things with 3D Puff that the other companies aren't doing, you can charge a little bit more for it. The same with applique. If you're doing something that sets you apart from your competition, other than price, then you can charge a little bit more for it because your competition probably can't or won't or don't have the resources to offer that same level of service. Exactly.
And that can go into a completely different area, but
a whole nother podcast.
If you master service, if you price right, and, you stay on time as far as when you say something's going to be done, get it done. You have good customer service and rapport with your customers. If you nail all that, there's been so many times where people come in and say, I can get it cheaper at so-and-so. It's free world. If you can get it cheaper there and it's all about money to you, have at it. Good luck to you. And there's so many times where they come back and say, oh, well, they dropped the ball and didn't get it done, or they completely ruined my order, or something like that. And it's like, well, yeah, cheap turns out being more expensive in the long run because you're basing it solely on price. But there's different factors there that competitors are always going to have a way to try to be one up the other guy. But if you stay true and hold firm to your business practices and your quality, you're going to eventually get those customers and those repeat customers too.
Yeah. And I mean, if you make a mistake, take care of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
That comes down to it. If they know that, and I'll give an example, and everybody's going to laugh at me, and feel free to laugh at me. So I did an order of shirts for a lady, and it was left and right chest with the logo on the left and the name on the right. And looking at the hooping station, when I hooped it, I put the logo on the left and the name on the right. And I did the whole order and I shipped it out to her, and she came back to me and she's like, hey, I'm really happy with the quality. It all looks great, but backwards. And I ordered new product. I got them in 2 days later because shipping, for some reason, it took an extra day. And I did that order and I got it out the next day to her. And not only did I ship it out, but I shipped it out next day. And yeah, I lost money on it. I mean, it's kind of the nature of making a mistake, but in her mind, she told me about a problem, and 3-4 days later, it was resolved and she had a new product.
Right. And when next time she's thinking I need shirts, if Jeff had done that, argued with her, well, you didn't specify wearing it or not left chest, and you're going back and forth, next time she's not going to order from him.
Or, even if I said, I'm sorry, I can't, you're going to have to buy new shirts. I'll cover the embroidery, but you're going to have to buy, there's no reason that she should have to incur any expense.
Right.
And taking care of the customer, if you make a mistake, taking care of it and making it right really, really goes a long way in their mind. I know it does in mine.
Right.
So,
and it comes into kind of another subject where it leads into talking with your customer about things. In the industry, Jeff recognizes that he flip-flopped them, but when we say left chest, we're talking about when you're wearing it. So a lot of people, they'll come in and especially when you're face-to-face with them, they may point to the right chest, but they say left chest, or vice versa, or they're referring to something and it's kind of a clue of, okay, are you talking about right chest when you're wearing it or right chest when you're looking at it? So a lot of people, perception is a question. So visuals, I think, are a good thing, because if you have, pictures on your order forms of shirts and hats and whatnot, you could actually mark it left chest, correct? And they can see the placement. So,
well, and normally, and of course, the one time I did and it bit me, but normally I take a picture of the first one that comes off and I send it to them.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then if they're like, okay, looks good, we're good. But the one time I didn't, I was having an off day and everybody had them, and I put it on the wrong side. And it was pretty comical for me, at least. I mean, and everybody else, I don't share that story because I'm proud of it. I share the story because I learned something from it.
We always do virtual mock-ups of the designs on the garments as this form of approval. So they not only see the design, but they see where it is on the garment. So,
yep. And here's a comment from Eric. Something we all have to remember. Remember, we aren't the audience for our policies or our marketing. And that's very true. Our customer doesn't want to know what the cost of stabilizer is. They could care less what the cost of thread is in California. Or, right. They want to know when they come in and they say, hey, I want this. They want to know how much it's going to cost for you to give them that at however many quantity. And if they probe further, you can start going into, different things of the reasons why, you're charging what you are. I like to go into time it takes to run on my machine. But at the end of the day, when I go buy a pizza, I don't want to know what the pepperoni costs. I want pepperoni on my pizza.
Right. Exactly.
So, Regina, I added shipping fee when a customer added on 2 pieces days after order was finalized and was already shipped. Yeah, if you're shipping it again to them and they're adding to the order and it's already gone, to me, that's justifiable. I would tell them, hey, look, your order's already shipped. So I'm going to have to charge you a shipping fee again because I'm going to have to ship it again. You can only eat so much cost. And sometimes you can do it in the name of customer service. But at the end of the day, you can only eat so much cost.
Right.
So, Jamie, I run all my 3D orders on hats at 500, maybe a little less, 7511 needles, and use the same needles on everything else we do aside of 3D. Justin definitely makes our 3D look great and easy to work with. I have a feeling that you digitize for them, Justin.
Yes, I do. Yeah, he's a good customer in San Diego.
Yeah. So on my machine, I'll tell you, I run 7511 titanium sharps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I run. Occasionally I'll swap them out with ballpoints, but not on 3D puff. I like to use sharps on 3D puffs. I like to use sharps on hats. Sometimes, depending on the hat, and I've seen this. One of my first hats I did was a fully sublimated hat. And if you run sharps or pretty much any design on a fully sublimated hat, Justin's smirking because he knows exactly what happens. You get this nice little white ring around all of it.
Yep.
And so sometimes I've tried using ballpoints to minimize that effect, but not too much luck.
No.
So I try not to do sublimated hats for that reason. And we have a question here from Trish. Do you find it more economically viable to digitize yourself or outsource? So crack my knuckles. We're going to go into a big conversation here about this. Well, not really. So when you're starting out and you're learning your embroidery machine, outsource your digitizing. As somebody who was very, very stubborn and said, I will not ever outsource a design. I'm going to do all the digitizing myself and learn it all. Yeah, I learned it. Yeah, it was a lot more painful than it had to be. And it wasn't until I actually had somebody else do a file for me that I was like, you know what? I really stuck at this. I mean, that's what it came down to. Watching somebody else's file run significantly better than any one of my files, I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing it wrong. Right. So if you're learning how to do embroidery, a file can make you think there's a machine problem. Me and Justin were just talking about it before. If you don't put tie-ins in your letters, when your machine starts sewing, it can pull the thread out of the eye. Right. And everybody will be telling you need to adjust your tensions. You need to change. Most I hear is tensions. When in all actuality, it's because you forgot to put 2 or 4 little tiny stitches that go in the beginning of the file or at the end of the file. So while you're learning your machine, I would outsource my digitizing. If you want to digitize, then you can start adding it in. Start with simple stuff and work your way up to more complex stuff. You can take classes and you can learn. I'm not going to say don't learn digitizing because I think it's great and I really enjoy doing it. And I think everybody should be able to do it if they want to. But if I pay Justin, I'm going to use Justin example, or Louise even, if I pay them $15, or $20, it's probably going to take them 10, 15 minutes to do a design for me, right? If I don't know what I'm doing and I'm starting out and I'm learning, it's going to take me probably an hour to do the same design. Then I'm going to run it on my machine, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to make adjustments, and then I'm going to come back and run it on my machine, and then I'll make adjustments, and I might be spending 6-7 hours working on a single file because I didn't want to pay them $20.
Right.
So if you're working and learning towards digitizing, that's great. And I think every shop should be able to do simple stuff on the fly. Names on a shirt, simple stuff they should be able to do. It really helps with your customer service that you can be able to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
But how much time is it going to take you and how frustrated are you going to be? When it happened to me, I was ready to walk away. And I did an interview with Louise on it. And if you guys want to go learn more about that, go listen to that interview. But I mean, it hit that point that I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do embroidery anymore. And then I learned, hey, you know what? It's me. It's not the machine. It's me. And that's when I really cracked down and sat down and started really learning to digitize. But it took that to get me to that point.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, the way I kind of look at it is especially if embroidery is new to you, period. Don't try to throw so many things in the frying pan all at once. Because just learning your machine and how to hoop properly and embroidering itself and all inclusive, how about just start with a design that you know is done by a professional? And not only that, is if it is something eventually that you really want to get into digitizing, is when you're at that machine and you're watching it run, you're going to start seeing certain things that digitizers do, especially if you use the same digitizer, because everybody has their own different styles and the way they do things. But if you can find that one good digitizer that you're working with, watch the design sew, and the more that you get comfortable with embroidery and that kind of becomes second nature to you, and then you're doing it every day, then you start getting into digitizing, because you've seen designs run, you know what works, what doesn't work, and why they do certain things. You're already got to step into the learning process of the basics on how it runs on the machine, and it'll give you a lot more insight when you start digitizing, whether you take a class or just start doing it yourself, or the videos of whatever software you buy that offers. But yeah, I would definitely try to get a handle on the embroidery first, and also, I mean, a lot of people they're a one person shop, so they may be doing the customer service as well as the invoicing as well as the embroidering. If you want to take on another thing like digitizing, that's just one more thing that's on your plate. It can be difficult. It's, you just got to look at it as you're kind of paying your employee. If you do have operators running your machines, you're paying employees. Well, it's just another expense that you're paying somebody that is their sole purpose is to digitize. That's what they do. That's what they focus on. So it's going to be a file that's going to be on your machine, run efficiently. Yeah, it's the $15, $20, $25, whatever you pay for it. It's a cost once. It's never going to be a cost again when that file is going to run, hopefully, job after job after job after job for that particular design. And you're going to make your money because it runs efficiently, it runs correctly, it runs beautifully, so your customers are happy. So I think it's a small expense to have a tool that's very, very, very important in the embroidery world.
So just remember, whether you digitize or not, you can have a successful company. There are successful companies out there that do not do any digitizing. They just do embroidery. They send out every one of their files. And a lot of times you can pass that cost along. When your customer walks in, you can say it's going to be $15 for digitizing. To turn your art into a file that my machine can run, it's going to be this much money. So, there's been a lot of discussions on that in other areas, so I'm not going to rehash it too much. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to make a profit.
Right.
So you don't have to digitize to be able to make a profit. So I'm going to pull up this comment here. It's all the way at the bottom, so I skipped a few, but I'll go back to them. Church says, thanks so much. Your story resonates with me, Jeff. Going from a domestic to a happy next week. Digitizing is doing my head in. See? And, I hate to say it, but Justin even said it earlier. You get some designs that you're pulling your hair out on. And Justin's got a lot of experience, and he's still pulling his hair out. And, I'll get to the point that it's the same with me. I'll be pulling my hair out over a design. And it's like, man, I just can't. And sometimes it's better to send it to Justin and let him pull his hair out than it is for me to pull my hair out because I lack hair to pull out.
There's been a couple times where I have thrown the file away and said, I'm starting over.
Yep.
And I just approach it a different way, and then it works. And it's like, okay, instead of pulling my hair out, trying to edit something where I'm obviously missing whatever the problem is, and it's kind of a start over. So,
and then that's when people walk out of your office and they're like, don't go in there. We're not going to talk about it. So we'll go here, Jamie, California time here. Sun is up and bright. Very nice. Fred, anytime a customer wants to supply their own shirts, I can guarantee you won't make a profit on the order. You know, that's a mixed bag right there. I I have a customer who watches sale racks and is able to go pick up Under Armour shirts for $2 a piece when they go on sale. And she wants them embroidered, and I factor that into my cost. But you know, I can't get an Under Armour shirt for under $16.
Right.
So if she can go get them from wherever and she's okay with the risk that my machine might eat it.
In my opinion, in that situation, you have a pricing for supplied goods, and you have a pricing when you're selling the goods themselves. So,
yep. So we're going to go into Letty here. She says, if they do supply shirts, I typically ask for one extra and run that as a sample for them to approve. I even had them label the placement with stickers. Yeah, you know, it doesn't hurt. Letty says, now if it's a small order, just label. You know, yeah. I've never had them label the shirt before, but I get it. I'm the guy that puts the right chest on the left chest and the left chest on the right chest. So, Candace, I wish you knew outsourcing was a thing when I first started. I do a mix now depending on my time and the design. Yeah, and I mean, that's all it comes down to is your time. If, you know, some days I shut down my computer and I sit at my machine because I know I have to kick out more production so that I can meet my costs. And other days I'll turn on my computer and I'll bug Justin. It all depends on the day. Aaron, been a rough week, exhausted, going to bed, see you on the replay. Well, we'll catch you on the replay too. And Letty, I equate it like this. I can put air in a low tire, but sometimes I need an expert to repair the tire. I can do minor digitizing, but it's not my expertise. Know your limits. And, you know, to know your limits, you have to explore your limits. But, you know, if you're struggling with the design, $15-20, it comes back and you can run it on your machine. Digitizing is not, and Justin can think about back when that in the day it was like this, but it used to be what, like $20 per 1,000 stitches?
Oh yeah. I mean, left chest designs would run anywhere from $50 to $85 that I could charge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely come down in price. So yes, I think 20 years ago, it's probably the embroidery shop that I got my start in actually had a digitizer in-house, and I used to do all her artwork where we used to blow it up 6-1. But back then it probably was cost effective to have two people in there basically doing the digitizing process because designs were so expensive. But yeah, it's with the newer softwares and you know, the
automation
the automation and the overseas competitors, it's brought the cost down quite a bit.
Yeah. And I just think, you know, if it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago, yeah, it might be worth pulling your hair out.
Right.
But now where the cost is fairly minimal, you know, to me, $20 for a left chest design is really reasonable. And especially if you're going to a known digitizer that does good work, then, right? I mean, $15-20 and you can go watch TV for 20 minutes or run an order for 20 minutes or.
And there's been customers that come to me and get a quote and their response is, oh, I can get it on X and X website for $7. It's like, yeah, you can, but I mean, is it going to look good? Is it going to be efficient? Is it going to, you know, not have 15 thread breaks in the first couple minutes? So yeah, save your $13 and it'll cost you another $60 in the lifetime of that design in headaches because it's not, you know, doing very well on your machine, or it comes out not very clean and your customer doesn't come back because he doesn't like the quality. So
my favorite, I bought this stock design, but I need _changed.
Right.
Why are you charging me to change it? Well, it's not my stock design.
Yeah, it's not my design.
It's not my design.
It takes time to fix it. And that's why I think stock designs are so hard is, you know, the big names out there, they're digitizing a design in a one way to hopefully cover all the bases, and sometimes it doesn't work. So you got to take that into account when you're using stock stuff.
Yep. I mean, when I send off an art to get digitized, Jeff's brain's not working today. When I send art, I usually tell them what type of shirts it's going on. I say it's going on this, dry fit, dress shirt, t-shirt, and they're going to go, oh, well, I need to change the settings so that it's going to run optimally on that.
Right.
And if I need an edit, usually I can make an edit myself. But if you have it, that's why digitizers have edits. You can send them a message and say, hey, I ran this on 25 moisture wicking shirts. They changed their mind and they want it done on business polos. A nice stiff cotton. And they're going to go, right. Okay, well, there you go.
And I think that's where that digitizing is such a large umbrella as far as what people can classify it as an embroiderer. You maybe not want to get into full-blown digitizing your designs, but I think there was a post the other day that I was thinking in our group asking if they should have software as an embroiderer. And it's like, absolutely. You need to have some type of level of lettering and editing as an embroiderer, I think, because there's those times where you have to get this job done. And even though you've emailed me and I got my face in the screen trying to get a job that I'm working on, and I'm not going to check email for another 20 minutes, that okay, I could call it up and there's just a quick adjustment on a density that I need to do. You know how to do that. Or I need to add a name underneath this logo. Something simple like that, you should, excuse me, you should be able to do on the fly. So
story time, because Jeff has a story about this. This is the reason why. So when I first started digitizing and I first realized, I need to send this stuff out, I had somebody come to me. It was a military unit and they were getting deployed. And they said, we want 50 or 75 patches done before we leave. Can you have them done in 3 days? Right? I said, yeah, let's go for it. And I sent my art to a digitizer because they needed it done quickly. And I paid the rush fee, right? It came back and the border actually covered the text. So I sent in for an edit and I didn't get an edit for 3 days. I had opened up, while I was waiting, I'd opened up my software and I went into the edit and I'm like, look, if I just pull this little thingy over here, now it's not covering, I can get it done. And that's what I did. And by the time I got my edit, I had produced all the patches, heat sealed them all, packed them up, shipped them out. And then my edit came back. So, there are going to be times that you're going to need an edit and your digitizer is just not going to be available, or they're not going to be able to get it done in the timeline that you need it done. People get sick, cars crash. There's things that happen. And so if you have the base editing knowledge of, if I bump this little thingy over here, you're not changing any settings, you're moving a node. Now you can run the job versus trying to find somebody on Facebook to make the change for you. So right. Just a little bit of editing knowledge can make a big difference. And if you have the software that you can do lettering and editing, then you're going to be able to take on the simple monograms, the minor edits that you need on a file. If your fill is coming out from underneath the border and you want to pull the fill a little bit further under, you can make that change without messaging your digitizer. You might be able to make it in a quick enough time that you can continue to run versus having to shelf the job and move on to the next one and come back to it.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. Now let's go here. There we go. Michael, I do not run orders that the customer supplies the products, and it's a double-edged sword. Some places do, some places don't. I do it because I'm the only one in my area that does it. And I'm the only one. So I get that business. It's a way for me to compete with shops that offer, the same service I do, but they have multi-heads and their dollar per hour is less than my dollar per hour. And right. So, we do what we do to make money. And if you can get away with not doing it, that's awesome. But some places they do it. So Fred, if that customer is bringing in an actual new and known shirt, okay, you can make money on those, an exception to the rule. However, most people want to bring in their own shirts or going to bring in crap that will just cause problems. And, that's where you come in. You run your business. You can make that call on the fly. When a customer brings you a shirt, there's no, the only known is that you're the one standing there looking at that shirt. You know what it is when you get it. So it boils down to it. People do it on an individual basis. I do it on an individual basis, but I do it. And it's because nobody else even considers the thought in my area.
Right.
And that sometimes just getting them in the door, that's half the battle, right? So, Jamie says, is it common to charge double for what you paid for digitizing? I do. $40 is about the standard charge for digitizing to customers. What I'll say on that is it depends on your area and competitive shops around you. If I price a garment at, let's say I price $40 for a shirt, right? And I'm including digitizing in that. And Justin prices $20 for a shirt and $20 for digitizing, right? If you can get away with charging it in your area, absolutely. Don't be surprised if they ask for the file. I know I would. But if all the stores around me are charging $15 for digitizing, then that's what I kind of need to charge to be in the ballpark. I have to stay within range because people don't necessarily understand what goes into digitizing, but they understand the tire shop over there is going to charge me $1,000 for a new set of tires, and this tire shop over here is going to charge me $900 for the same set of tires.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think if it's something in your area that justifies charging that, I always, it's a hard cost. You mark up your shirts. You're making your money off your embroidery. I don't think there's anything wrong with making money off the digitizing. I mean, it's kind of a handling fee. It's your time where you're discussing their logo with them. You're getting on your computer. You're emailing your digitizer. So, there's time involved that even though, they're doing the actual digitizing, there's still time involved that you're taking to get their design set up. Plus, I think charging something like double or adding another $10 to $15 on, that kind of gives you the wiggle room too, that if it is a really big job that you want and you have that room to say, hey, you know what, you're giving me these 300 pieces, I'll knock off $15 off the setup for you. I'll knock off $20 off the setup. And even though you're not losing money, to the customer, they think they're gaining a little bit from you, and then you're offering a discount. So,
yep. And that all flies into knowing your costs. It's easy when you've got a singular markup on one item. So, make sure that your costs and your costs are being covered. The one thing I don't like to see is when places go under and they don't know why. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get your books done, you should be hopefully in the green line and not the red line. And knowing your costs helps you evaluate how you're doing and going along. So we've got Martin Campbell saying, hi, kids. Makes me feel young. And Jamie, yes, I make all files paid for available to the customer upon request. Definitely, it's a one-time fee, and the file is theirs. So, that's a whole nother debate that I don't think we want to jump into is who does the file belong to?
Yeah.
That can become a whole nother thing. And I know that other people have covered that, and it's almost like a dead horse. Is people have their opinions, and that's, it's tough. But at the end of the day, it's it all depends on how you charge them for it. If you marked it as you guys paid for digitizing, then they're going to say, but I paid for it. If you charge it in as setup costs or whatever, then they're not seeing that they paid for it. So it's a whole nother conversation that we'll shelf for another day or another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, I don't see too many more comments flying in or any. And if I missed your comment, I'm sorry about it. Make sure you throw something at me later on, like a shoe. But we are coming up on the hour. So new things that are going on. Justin is going to be doing another 3D Puff webinar. It's part 2 of his 3-part series. So part 2 will be covering. Go ahead, Justin.
We're going to cover a little bit more of the technical digitizing side of things, and we're also going to get into a little bit more difficult designs like multi-layering of foam and multi-colors too. When you're mixing colors and not just doing something simple one color, but we're going to cover a little bit more of the intermediate level type stuff, and then the one coming up in June, we're going to get into some really, really fun advanced stuff. So.
Part 3. I may or may not have some samples sitting on my desk that are covered in part 3. I would.
We have some top secret stuff we've been working on.
But there you go. So we do have that coming up. You can find a link in the Embroidery Nerd group. Justin has it on his page. I believe we have it on our page as well. I will try to circle back and drop it in the comments because I don't have Facebook open, because if I did, all you'd hear the whole time is ping, ping, ping. So it's not open.
So yeah, if you hit us in the group, there's posts that I've made. Any social media I have at JA Digitizing, I have a link tree on there, so there's a link on there as well.
Yep. So that is coming up. We're pretty excited for it, and that will be happening on the 15th. Correct, sir?
That's correct.
Yep. So the 15th. And we are very excited for that. So if you haven't signed up, please sign up. If you haven't joined the Embroidery Nerd group, please join the group. Make sure that when you do request to join, that you answer all of the questions and check, I agree to the rules. We do check those. We do screen those. You'd be surprised at how many people don't answer the questions, and we decline. We don't typically block, so that you can always request again. So if you haven't gotten in, make sure you request again and make sure that you answer the questions. Justin's webinar is coming up. We have some more videos that we're also working on that we're going to be putting out. And then it looks like we're going to have a flock of people at the ISS show in Fort Worth. So if you're going to Fort Worth, make sure that you try and find us. Hopefully we'll have something for you there as well. Anything you want to add, Justin?
I think that's it for tonight.
All right. Well, with that, guys, I'd like to thank you for your time and hanging out with us. That is Justin Armenta with JA Digitizing Studios and the Embroidery Nerd. I'm Jeff Fuller. Thank you, guys, and have a wonderful night.
Good night, guys.